listening to it, but I'll say good evening anyway. I got a different recording device, so I have binaural capabilities now. And I think that's going to add a lot to the sound of the videos. As the first physical trigger I'm going to try, I have a beard, and this is the sound of my beard on the mic. So that was some official ASMR Rhythms beard action. I'm going to read a couple of things in this video, both of them poems. The first one is a poem by someone other than me. This is by a fairly famous Canadian poet. If you're Canadian, maybe you've studied him in school. If you aren't Canadian, it's possible you've never heard of him. His name is Don McKay, and his poem that I'm going to read is called Wings of Song, and it begins with a quote by Octavio Paz that says, "We talk because we are mortal." And then the poem begins, "And because we aren't gods, or close to gods, we sing. Your breath steps boldly into lift to feel that other breath breathing inside it. Summertime, amazing grace. And when it stops, you sense that something fold back into air to leave you listening, lonely as a post. Shall we call this angel? Shall we call it animal or elf? Most of us are happy with a brief, companionable ghost who joins us in the shower or behind the wheel. Blue moon, hound dog, life is like a mountain railroad. When your voice decides to quit its day job, which is mostly door to door, to take its little sack of sounds and pour them into darkness with its unembodied barks and murmurs, its refusal to name names, its disregard for sentences, for getting there on time, or getting there, or getting. That was Wings of Song by Don McKay. Okay, I haven't read this one aloud in a long time. I wrote it in 2013, and this is a poem about a poem. I'm a great lover of the Allen Ginsberg poem Howl, as I would say most people who love poetry also have some measure of an appreciation for Howl. If you haven't read Howl, I definitely recommend that you do. It's a poem that's meant a lot to me over the years, and I have spent time trying to memorize it, and I didn't get as much of it as I would have liked, but it's something that I really enjoy reading out loud, and I have a couple of different recordings of Allen Ginsberg reading it, and I really enjoy, sometimes instead of listening to music, when I'm walking around with headphones on, I'll be listening to Allen Ginsberg reading poems, including Howl. And so what I'm about to read you is a poem that I wrote in 2013, which is about Howl. So it's a poem about a poem. Mr. Ginsberg has led me around for decades, through breaks and jumps, enjambment, alliteration, and paranoid leaps of faith, on train rides to family gatherings and smashed dawn returns to mousebox bachelor sofa beds that weren't beds but still wouldn't let me up, on Trinity Bellwood's park benches and Parkdale stoops. I got truly lost in lines about New York and boredom in rooms in mental hospitals in smaller towns on real outskirts of the acceptable. I found Howl so unforgettable that I spent a summer determined to commit it to memory, every line a memory of commitment, to friendship by the state, to self-destruction, to the word, to an escape from the world to a world within that world. Howl opens with regret at what's happened and over who it happened to. Part 1 takes us from rooftops to subways to dirty pre-dawn tables and fables of dementia approaching the transcendent. Part 1 is a tale of travel by any means and destinations both welcoming and cold, on mescaline and old Milwaukee, fueled by each other's visions and goals, hypnotic pendants swinging from the hands of parents, professors, doctors, dealers, and probably the president. Precedents set and shattered like windows over method acting alleyways where people sleep and dream about real evil overtaking everything they feel they used to need. And where does it lead? It leads to Moloch. It drags us to the front lines where poverty meets greed, and we drop to our knees as we see the sum total of all that what's ugly within us could conceive. With thunderous footsteps, the monster known as Moloch tramples in grandstands, gathering support from some and submission from the rest. The best we could do has left so many with so little, and with so little left, we can only hide from the light of the flames, as Moloch gets one heavy step closer to some Republican idea of perfection. The older I get, the more this part chills me and leaves me moved by its truth. Mr. Ginsberg spins it like a nightmare of tragic scripture, warning future generations that this is what we did before it did us in. In Rockland, a code name for the place with the rules and medications, a school without mentors where education means learning how to stop upsetting those around you and fooling them into forgetting that your insides hurt and yearn and turn everything you hear into threats and allegations. Carl Solomon is locked up in Part 3, and Mr. Ginsberg is out and about but no less free. Those 3 mighty words, I'm with you. Say them to someone. Say them and mean it, like Mr. Ginsberg meant it as he typed and cried and built a tower higher and higher, to the point that nothing anyone else could say or do could stop what he'd set in motion. A battle cry to everyone inside to accept commotion, to push in one direction until something budged, until waiting for approval seemed as relevant as leaving love to be decided by a judge. With Part 3 of Howl, Mr. Ginsberg does what in life he could only dream. He frees his friend, and Part 3 ends with that final line leading across the thoughtless nation to his cottage door, where everything, the ones who've sunk and those who've suffered, the muffled cries of hungry anguish and helpless shuffling entropy, falls away like drops of water in a perfect, eventual midnight post-swim embrace.